Thank you for being here so promptly at 8. We're sorry we had a little printing problem. We got solved. Thank you, Holly. And you've got the final recommendations in front of you. You know, Sam couldn't be here. He said has a family event this morning with his oldest daughter, and she needs attention, and we're glad he's there with her. You know, but he and John and I really appreciate your attendance and participation, and the speaker does in our Rural Development Council this year. What we're going to do, we're going to have a few more comments, and we're going to take about a 15-minute break and let you take a look at the final recommendations and kind of read over them, familiarize yourself with them. We hope that we've addressed the issues and everything, pretty much things that we've discussed in a meeting. You know, what we've done in the past, I think, too, this year, only stuff that we discussed actively in a meeting or thing that we can put in here. You may have a burning issue. If you do, we're going to be back again next year, so you'll have an opportunity to do that. So at this moment, we'll just take some break, take some time, and look over the recommendations, and we'll start back in about 15 minutes. One thing I think you notice in there, there's a few where we've punted a little bit. You know, we recognized Chairman Powell yesterday, and the speaker did, and I think we all know what an integral part he's been for this for the last 2 years, and this year too. And his just in-depth knowledge of some parts of this are just, they're what they were, his experience in life and knowledge. And so we're having to kind of make up some of that. And so you'll see a few punts, and that's just like we're going to do a study. We're having some reports back to us by June, so we can act on it later. I mean, because we just don't know. We just don't have his knowledge. But we'll just kind of start off at the top and look at the recommendations, and just kind of go over them each one. You're welcome to chime in. We're looking for discussion. Hopefully we've kind of done what you think's right. You know, agriculture, if you remember that first one, we're talking about IQF. Those are freezers, you know, that allows us to freeze produce. It's something we don't have in Georgia. And you'll look in the recommendations, you know, we're wanting Chairman McCall's committee, you know, to develop a study committee to look at it. I think it's something we really need down the road, and I think he's agreed to look at it in his short time he still has. And but he'll sure have a trusty assistant to be able to look at it. We turn the page, and Georgia Grown, you read the comments. You know, our co-chairman has been very, very involved in this, and it's been very passionate. If you don't follow Sam's Facebook page, you need to. It's a good reflection of what's going on in rural Georgia, especially in the vegetable world. You know, our recommendations are to make sure to require that public health, agriculture, DOE, DOAS review all statutes related to the purchase of Georgia farm products. And that's back to us in June. So what are the barriers out there? I think we continually run into barriers and why they can't do this or why I can't do that. So we can look at them and then come up with some ideas so we can fix it to help our folks. Next, you look at uniform provisions. We talked about in forestry and ACCG working together to come up with uniform forestry harvesting and transportation of timber throughout the state. They are working together on a bill, and hopefully we'll pass something that'll make it uniform. I think they're working together, so they'll come to us with an agreed-to bill so that we're not doing the debate as it moves on through. If anybody has any discussion, say, hey, because I don't have to look around, you know. Building codes. Our co-chairman here has been very involved in this. Encourage use of the mass timber by state by the adoption of the timber update. And it's specific to just the timber update in the International Building Code. And I think it's very impressive what other states are doing. It's a shame we're behind. Next page, on page 5, is flexible capital. And if anybody wants to chime in and help me with this, they can. You know, this is the $100 million that's divided by 5 folks. It's an investment fund. We are supporting the continued access to flexible capital for businesses in rural Georgia. And that one. Next into broadband, as we go down through there. You know, we heard yesterday, and that's why they were here. You know, we're continuing to look at how can GFA expand their funding parameters to include broadband deployment. We know this is going to be a tight budget year, but we sure wanted to make sure we're giving them the opportunity to do that. And we can encourage them even if we have to. And they seem very positive in wanting to do that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask on that. We did have that presentation yesterday, and he described those steps he felt, or I guess felt that we would have to go through for GFA to be able to do that, including a constitutional amendment and amending the statute as it relates to GFA. I mean, are those things that we're recommending?
Mine, yes.
Okay.
But I would, up for any other discussion. I think the money is going to be the issue at this moment. Chairman England?
Chairman Parsons, I think at this point we're just saying let's get our arms a little bit further around it. This is one of those areas that Jay had been so instrumental in working in. And to sit here today and tell you yes, no, maybe, whatever, I think would be kind of outside our bandwidth, pun not intended, but anyway. But give us, it punts a little bit to give us a little more time to further explore some of the conversations that Jay may have been having with some others to figure out exactly what it is we may need to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason I ask is it would seem, and I mean, I'm just asking this for information, but in order to do this, it sounds like from the presentation yesterday, we would have to go through those steps.
Right.
And that's,
And I think that's correct. I
Okay.
think that would be correct. And I mean, you know, we've done some more complicated things than that too, so I don't think anybody's afraid of the work. It's just making sure we're gonna do it right.
and I guess that's all. Except I would just, I mean, that's all. I just want to know if that's what we were actually recommending. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman England. I hear Bill Werkheiser.
Before we get too far, on the the tree business, when Nimmer was doing his presentation, we've already got stuff in code that apparently a lot of our county, well, like you said, 56 counties are not complying. I know Todd's here. Could we maybe get ACCG and GMA send something to all of our counties and cities to maybe just relist what we've already got now? And, I mean, because they're already not complying, so. You see what I'm saying?
Bill, the first year I was here, 2015, the first bill I carried was House Bill 198. And it was a uniformity bill that dealt with this situation to get all 159 counties on the same page. And we've got 56 that are not following what's out there now. And there's some amendments we need to make to it to tighten it up a little bit as well.
I'm not saying we need some kind of follow-up or something to.
Well, that's what we're working with ACCG and GFA right now, trying to come to an agreement.
All right.
Is that good, Bill? You
Yeah.
good with that?
Thank you.
And then next one we're looking at on page 5, local bonding. This is Chairman Powell has a bill on this that we've been moving to include broadband deployment operation as economic development areas that can be financed by local bond revenues. Next is on economic development and water and sewer funding. This one we've had a lot of debate with. This is Chairman Watson has been very involved in this, and making sure that we give rural communities additional weighting in the application process for water and sewer funding within GFA. He's very passionate about that. I'm sure that's his thing. It's very much so. Look at regional development authorities. This is a bill here. I believe, is this not Blake? This is one Jay has worked on also. And Chairman England also. Incentivizing the creation of voluntary regional development authorities, which would make up the minimum of 3 counties and allow industrial parks to receive 1 Georgia funding and build and equip a general practitioner medical facility. And that's, I think, a great idea. You think about it, and as we've talked about it, this just making communities buy in.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to say, Jay had worked on the bill. We did not wind up dropping it last year because we were a little busy on several other things. So it actually on this, it would be talking about a regional development authority of 3 to 5 counties. And should they come together to do that type regional park, one of the provisions contained within it would be that the best tier ranking of the member counties, so if it's a tier 1 with 2 tier 3 counties or whatever, that the best tier ranking would apply to that industrial park itself, no matter where its geographical location was. If it was if there's a Tier 1 county involved and there's a Tier 4 county involved, if the park winds up in the Tier 4 county, it's still within that park gets to take advantage of that Tier 1 incentive piece. But it also, one of the things is we've had these discussions talking about healthcare being such an important part of economic development, and so many counties that do not have a primary care physician or may only have one primary care physician, then kind of sweeten the pot to encourage this sort of semi-unique development of these co-located parks, is to allow for One Georgia grants to go toward building and equipping a facility. And even, not being so specific to say it necessarily has to be on site, but if there's a portion of a downtown that a building could be redeveloped or something that would kind of fit into that mold and what we're trying to do. And then we would kind of look at what the long-term view would be as far as ownership of the doctor that would commit to come into that. But trying to provide a place for physicians coming out of our medical schools to be able to set up a practice and not have the overhead of trying to pay for a building and a facility, that if they still have some student debt, then they can concentrate on it. But otherwise, it's become almost impossible for a doctor to come straight out of school and be able to set up a practice in a small town and be able to make it work. So,
Yes, sir. I appreciate your passion, Chairman England, on this. It's important. Anybody else have a comment?
Can
Chairman
you do
Perkle?
part 2 without doing part 1?
no, the idea of part 2 of the medical facility is kind of the incentive to go together and create that park.
Thank you. What else? Regional Commission, they were here yesterday, did a great job presenting. I think it's our recommendation that there needs to be a reduction in the size of their board of directors, establish a list of core services that they must perform, and implement performance standards under oversight of the Department of Community Affairs. Solar farms were next. As we heard them down in St. Mary's, we've asked the Public Service Commission to submit us a report regarding the decommissioning of these. Chairman Powell and I talked about it quite a lot, about there's going to be a cost, and using a similar idea as the gasoline tank folks do for decommissioning of fuel tanks might be a good idea. We're going to let them look in it and report back to us. Trade license reciprocity, requesting that the Secretary of State submit us a report. I know that I keep forgetting the name of it. Georgia First is also looking at this. I think it's something we know that's important, so that when our military folks move into Georgia and others move in and our folks move away, that they have a good reciprocity in trades that can come in there. And you'll see the list for existing agreements, suggestions of new ones. We're giving them the opportunity to talk about that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
one of the things that we passed a couple of years ago was in regards to veterans, about like spouses moving in and things like that, and that was a good bill. May do well to go back, whoever looks at this, to see if there's been any problems whatsoever with reciprocity and how many people are taking advantage of that.
Thank you. Duly noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Education. Yeah, no, it's been, apprenticeship programs, were very, very important. We feel it's very important that we continue to fund the creation of those and in our high schools and post-secondary. It's been fun to listen to how Georgians and Georgia businesses have really took off with those. Small class sizes in rural areas, we know it's been an issue, as we heard yesterday here at South Georgia Tech, and he talked about them, how that we need to use something. I think we talked yesterday, similar to the quick start method, where a community might need some training on a certain specific issue. Through needs assessment, they identify them, that TCSG come up with a similar idea to fund those and go into communities to address their needs. Sometimes not really fundable to build a building and do a thing for a long period of time when they just need a targeted small thing. Next is healthcare. We have a lot of healthcare recommendations. It's always been one thing that we've always worked a lot on. Starts off there, we have a bill on the rural physician tax credit. Recommendations updated to include other medical professionals such as nurse practitioners, physician's assistant. There's a bill there. As we know, there'll be probably others added, maybe some taken away through the committee process. That one's sitting there ready to go. One thing we saw, the next one is residency incentives. When we were meeting in the Eatonton, and we know it just, if we're involved in health, we know that residency, we need to do anything we can to keep a Georgia student who's been in medical school in Georgia to do their residency in Georgia, and that we recommend that more weight be given to Georgia students when selecting applicants. And I know we'll have to work with USG and others to figure out the right way to do that, but we know it's so important that we keep our Georgians in Georgia. Physician placement and tracking. I think I'm very proud of what we've done in the legislature. I know we all are, but what we've done to create the possibilities for more physicians in Georgia. But we do need to know what's going on. And what this is asking is, the Georgia Board of Health Care Workforce to track them for 10 years. Most of us, or a few of y'all will be here, most of us may not be, but you'll need to see what we've done. Is it working? And we'll get that as we move along, and so we'll see results hopefully very quickly that we've done a great job with that. Succession planning, you look at there at the Rural Health Innovation Center, the recommendations to implement a planning program for rural physicians and other medical professionals, which can be a resource for community whose physician may be aging out or leaving from one reason or another, so that they keep a physician in their community. A clinical behavioral health providers. If you look there, there is a federal program, but we want to add clinical behavioral health providers to the current physician for areas assistance loan repayment program. Because I think if your behavioral health has just been a momentous thing we have got to address, and this would be one method of doing it. And also, right below it is the Psychiatric Residency Program funding to establish one. We'd like to see the first one in the Moultrie area where they, as we heard, they have worked extremely hard to get that started there. And we would love to see that program, as money is available, move into maybe Rome or maybe Gainesville or maybe wherever else they can do it to really get these psychiatric residencies in other areas of the state to meet the needs of Georgians. That's Chairman Watson's baby for sure. School social workers. I was in a meeting with last Wednesday morning. This came up for training that DFACS was doing a training and some little nonprofit wanted to go to it, and there was this little discussion about it. But we really want to see partnerships so that school systems and others can cross-train when there's a training meeting, so people don't have to travel so far, but at least have access and use our money wisely so that training can occur across the state. And lastly, school-based health clinics. We've seen the impact of them, and I see Chairman Cooper shaking her head up and down to encourage them, especially using telemedicine in partnership with the FQACs. They're on fire for this, because it will help them become more financially stable and grow, and they're really moving on it, even in my area. Well, that's our recommendations. I'm sure there's others that if you want to add, we'll be glad. Dominic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And since you ended with healthcare, I wanted to kind of jump in here. And we had heard a couple of times from a Georgia-based company here called All Health Choice. And one of the most recent statistics that she shared with us, in particular in our Medicaid population, our Medicaid-only patients, that they had identified more than 300 that were massive users of our Medicaid, and that they were around $300,000+ per patient per year. And to do remote patient monitoring on them with an average claims reduction of about 20%, they were looking at saving the state $30 million. The federal government's looking at a resolution right now that is going to allow them to reimburse through Medicare remote patient monitoring. And I think the one thing that this committee would probably all agree on, that a lot of the future, not all of the future of healthcare, Madam Chair, but a lot of the future of healthcare is going to be remote patient monitoring via this little phone right here. There is a race right now to get 5G capability in most every part of this state. Probably up in the mountains will be a little bit tougher, but if they can get 4 to 5G capability, all of these remote patient monitoring companies are going to be able to monitor the daily care of regular citizens or those on Medicare or Medicaid. I have a couple of suggestions that aren't necessarily going to be in the way of recommendation for legislation. It's kind of like what we do with the Department of Agriculture and Georgia Grown and the IQF. If the Department of Community Health and Frank Berry would open up some codes for a pilot type of a program for them to monitor at least a portion of those frequent flyers and those high users, you'd be looking at around $350 per month per patient, per participant for the first 15 months. And then they come back to this legislature or this committee and just lay the data in front of you. And if the data shows that they are saving you $10 million, we just keep saving money. We just keep paying. We keep doing remote patient monitoring. But if they don't, then they, in future monitoring, to try to get it to the point to where it's doing what it's supposed to, they reimburse you your money. It don't cost you a dime, and they go at risk on that. So that first recommendation would be trying to encourage in some way, I don't know how that happens, whether you do it with a letter, if it comes from the governor's office or their policy people, DCH to open up those codes to allow for remote patient monitoring reimbursement. And the federal government already does it now. And since you also closed with the federally qualified health centers, what this does is through the providers in those FQHCs, it gives them another revenue stream to be able to get access to some of these folks in parts of Georgia that we've been talking about for 3 years and keep them from going into crisis on chronic illnesses. The other recommendation is to look at doing some sort of a pilot program. And this one wouldn't necessarily be a pilot. There's two different codes. There's codes for Medicaid-only patients that go to federally qualified health centers. And then there's the codes that they would do for those, I guess you would call them the sickest of that population of Medicaid. So I kind of ran those two together. The FQHCs is going to be the easy one. I know that Dwayne Cavga with the Georgia Primary Care Physicians Association has been very involved in this with their lawyers and about what they would have to have in codes to get reimbursement. Becky Riles has been involved in that. And then the other one is for them to do reimbursement for those. So again, this is a Georgia-based company that is leading the nation in the technology and software to be able to monitor these people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But it would probably have to be done with like an RFP or an RFQ where it would be open for competitive bids for people to come in and monitor. So I'm sorry that took a little long, but that group has really worked hard to help this committee find ways to reduce health care costs to the taxpayers and the burden that they carry and provide better quality and access to health care to people across the state.
Chairman Cooper, do you have any comments on that? Chairman England?
Well, have you talked to Commissioner Berry?
That was my question.
Pardon?
Chairman Corbett said that was his question.
Oh,
Stole
if
his thunder.
We have, and I'm going to be careful how I say this, but I don't really know but one way to say anything is I hadn't had a lot of success talking to an unelected bureaucrat yet in Atlanta. And so I apologize for those that may offend or step on their toes, but that probably means I am talking directly to you. Well, I'm just telling you that's coming from Chair Lady Houston.
Darn it, no, he didn't catch that, I'm sorry.
I think the response was more or less that this is just, this is going to be a very complicated process, that it would be something that they would have a problem trying to designate the monies for that remote patient monitoring reimbursement. And what it lays out in this proposal that we could talk more about is it would take a year to identify the ones that would give us the most bang for their buck. But Ms. Houston, they were going to call us back within 2 weeks of that meeting that we had. It's been 5.5 months. I hadn't heard from anybody yet. So you tell me how you would have handled that. And so we had a conversation with them. I spent about 2 hours with them that morning, and I think what they want is for this body to help them figure out the best way to do that, because there's going to be some appropriations in that, for sure.
I tell you what I would do since you're the floor leader for the governor, why don't you get the governor to put some money in the budget for a pilot program?
And I've talked to Ryan Lowe probably 4 or 5 times, and I have not had a sit-down meeting with him yet, so.
Maybe they'll put something in the budget for a pilot program.
I'm just telling you that my frustration has been since the day I was elected. If it doesn't come from a certain proposal, I'm not having a lot of success, and it may be me. Maybe I'm the problem, but I'll get out of the way and let's do some of this. But I've talked to everybody in Atlanta 3 times to try to figure out how to lower these healthcare costs, get some of these reimbursements, and just, that's why I'm here this morning making these recommendations. So perhaps this body that's worked for the last 3 years can have a little more success than I've had.
Chairman Stevens.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, the language really ought to come from the subcommittee on health on appropriations. So Chairman Parrish, who's on this committee, couldn't be here today, but we might recommend that he put that language in the budget.
So Chairman Cooper.
I'm one to go after the bureaucrats also, but I think the healthcare issue is so enormous. And to give the governor credit, there's been a very big project that they're working on, which will make a great deal of difference in how we begin to handle healthcare across our state. And I think that maybe that might be taking precedent over individual projects. Not that they're not good, Dominique, but just that we're still trying to get some kinks out of just telemedicine to make it more available. So I just think it takes a little time. And like I say, I'm one to go after him over there too, but I think maybe you're just in line and it hadn't quite come up. But I agree with you. They shouldn't tell you that they're going to get back to you in 2 weeks and not get back to you. They should say, look, we're just, drinking from a fire hose right now. It's going to be a while before we get to this, if that's the way it's going to be. So talk to the governor, see about if they're willing to let something go in.
In the meantime, Madam Chairman, would it be okay with the committee that would discuss this like Chairman just said here, do similar to what we did on page 3 in a recommendation for the House Committee to, on agriculture, to recommend that Chairman Parrish's committee, encourage them to create a study committee to look at this. Because I know, like you've said, both of you said, it's a complex issue that needs it needs our encouragement. I agree with you, that needs our encouragement. Does anybody have any discussion, yay or nay on that? Adding something like that to this? Ms. Penny? Or?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
And I thank you, and thank you, Dominic. It was eye-opening to me when we talked, I think it was in Eatonton, about the 372 what do they call them, frequent flyers? The heavy users, of the frequent flyers, is that what they call them? $100 million a year. It just absolutely blew my mind. And I think that if we could get with Chairman Butch and see if we could get some wording in there to see about, possibly a pilot, that if we could just make a dent in that, we can make a difference. When you're looking at $100 million, if you get a little dent in that, that starts to add up pretty quick. So,
It just stay away, I think,
Dominic, if it'll make you feel any better, when we had the pilot program for obesity, it just took years. It just takes a long, long time. I know we want instant stuff, but you remember for a couple of years we did a pilot program on, I can't even what you call it, when people want to lose weight and
bypass surgery.
bariatric
Yeah,
surgery.
bypass.
And what a long time it took for us to do that. And I know it's discouraging because you're a minute man.
Particular when you're looking at saving the amount of money that this has the potential to save, and
Yeah.
we're trying to cut the amended budget 4%. It is complicated, Ms. Penny, and I totally agree with you. And government should be arduous, and it should take time, because if you can do something good quick, you can do something bad quick. But, it's hard to go to some of these departments and say, we want you to find 4% in your budget, and then you got another, a proposal over here that's gonna save you $30 million. That goes a long way towards cutting $200 million out of a budget.
Chairman Cooper has a comment.
Dominique, I don't know whether you get them, but maybe because I'm chairman of health, I can't tell you how many times I meet with people that have a new type of program that will save us money for the state and solve our problems. And basically, they're selling something.
Did they
And
tell you they won't charge you if it doesn't work?
sometimes, so that there's a payback in it. And I'm not saying that that company's not above board and it's not the way for us to go. But I think sometimes just shifting through all of this, and I think sometimes that the bureaucrats get a little jaded by it also because there's always that problem. So just keep working on it. I'm glad to look at it and, like I say, go to Chairman Parrish and see what happens.
Yeah, I think we're looking at, Blake's helping us here with the words that recommend that the Subcommittee on Appropriations for Health study the issue of remote patient monitoring. Is that good, Dominic? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Chairman England.
No offense to my buddy sitting here to my left,
That
because
means he's fixing to blister me.
no,
Amen.
I wouldn't do that. But, Dominic has certainly been one of the most passionate folks that I've served with in the time that I've been in the House. And I know he gets frustrated. But I have also worked many hours and many days and been in many foxholes with Commissioner Berry from the time he was at DBHDD, mine and his first initial meeting when he became commissioner there, and then when he moved over to DCH. We get frustrated. I get frustrated, and I have been for almost 16 years now, at the seeming bureaucracy that we always butt up against. And Dominic, you put it very well. Something that's easy to do good is easy to do bad sometimes as well. But in Frank's defense, I feel like I need to offer a little bit of that for him. You've got a department there that takes some very specialized skill sets in order to understand and walk through all the things that have to be walked through, whether it's dealing with Medicaid, whether it's dealing with CMOs, whether it's dealing with PBMs, whether it's dealing with whatever. And our handicap as a state is that we're not necessarily able to go to the marketplace and hire or be able to pay what it takes to get those experts that can come in and run a department like that or to staff a department like that. And so the handicap there for Commissioner Berry and others have been that he has wisely taken money that went to a lot of positions and concentrated it in a few to get the absolute best that could be afforded. But it also in times leaves them very short-staffed. And I'll just give an example of those things that happen that no one's expecting to happen, and that was a 24-inch water line breaking at Grady Hospital a week and a half ago that no one saw coming. No one realized the impact it would have in the metropolitan area there on emergency services and what is now having to happen with diversion of ambulances to other hospitals. And quite frankly, other hospitals that were not equipped to handle the volume that Grady has been handling on a daily volume for years. So those are the kind of things that on a good day when those things happen, you're still not prepared for them. And the number of times that I talk to Commissioner Berry, whether it's a week or a day, quite often there are 15 of those problems that are arising every 5 minutes. And there's only, again, I go back to bandwidth, there's only so much bandwidth that an individual or a group of individuals can have to handle something like that. I've met with the folks with All Health Choice, and I'm sold on it, and I think that's something we need to move forward, but quite honestly, for lack of a better term, it's not the hottest fire burning right now in their shop, and I understand it. That's not a good answer, but at the same time, a human being or a group of human beings can only do so much in a given day's time. It's not an excuse, but it's just the truth. But I'm certainly fine with the recommendation that's been put forward. I know that Chairman Parrish has looked at this and talked to these folks a little bit as well, and he's a born-again believer on what they can do as well. So look forward to doing anything I can to continue to help move this ball down the court or field.
Thank you, Chairman. Terry.
Yeah, just real quick, I want to tag team on what Chairman England said. Like Dominic, I get very, very frustrated sometimes with the bureaucracy and the regulation. It's real easy to throw this out. I will just say from personal experience, having dealt with Commissioner Berry, I think if you have a one-on-one conversation with Commissioner Berry, he'll tell you that he shares a lot of the same frustrations that we have. So I'm just going to, just kind of take up for him, but it is easy to throw out there, but I think it's a great recommendation to turn over to Butch Parrish, and I think that he will find that Commissioner Berry will be extremely cooperative in working with him.
And I bet you're going to get a phone call pretty quick.
No, I was clear. I'm probably, I think I'm the problem, sounds like.
No. Any others? Chairman Blackman.
Real quick, if relatively new to the committee, but wanted to mention this, and I don't think it needs to necessarily be added here or anything like that, but one of the presentations early on, I think it was in Moultrie, regarding the GIC program and DCA and what they had done in Hawkinsville with regard to, I think, rehabilitating a couple of existing facilities.
Just give a little bit of GIC, tell what it is, make sure everybody's on the same page.
Well, it's certain cities are able to apply into a 3-year program through DCA, and they assist them in kind of redeveloping and rehabilitating and their communities. And it was a really positive story coming out of Hawkinsville, and I think there were 2 facilities they were able to redevelop, rehabilitate for housing. And I just thought that, we use the word encouragement a lot with regard to what's going on in rural Georgia, and that's certainly killing more than one bird with one stone. So just thought that might be worth looking at and how we could possibly encourage some of that further. That's it.
So
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be included. It was just, again, I'm relatively new. I didn't know if that had been visited before. Barely scratched the surface talking with Chairman Powell on that earlier, and just wanted to throw that out there for consumption.
Yeah.
That was the one with
And I don't know if it's in the,
They did. It was
I
a
don't know
mill.
if you see it in the meeting highlights, which I think are published too. It is, okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman McCall.
Shaw, there is a study committee report coming out on workforce type housing that may go along with some of the stuff you talking about from Vance Smith's study committee over the summer. And all of it, I think, will work together in with what they're doing and what you talking about.
Chairman Stevens, did you have?
I did. If the members will just, as you scan through these recommendations, whether it be economic development, whether it be education, whether it be healthcare and telemedicine and everything else that we do, if you'll just put an asterisk by broadband in honor of our fallen member, none of this stuff is going to happen until we can get broadband all across this state, and this ought to be the centerpiece of our recommendations.
Absolutely, thank you. Got that? Got that. Any other comments or ideas that we should add or discussion? I'm ready for a motion. There you go.
I move the House Rural Development Council adopt the recommendation before us as amended with the ability for the staff to make non-context adjustments as needed.
You have a second, but Rogers? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. I sure appreciate it. Go ahead.
It's been brought to my attention that Senator Greg Kirk has been put in hospice, that they called Hospice Inn. So I think we just ask everyone to please keep him and his family, his wife Rosalind, in your prayers. Everybody here and everybody behind us, please keep them in your prayers.
And before we just adjourn in just a moment, by no means this is the end of this. We've got next year. You're going to see all of us in the Capitol, maybe again next year after the primaries and all that stuff. But make a list of things that we need to work on, and because we sure need those. Also, if you're writing a news article, please use Betsy. There's a lot of information in these reports, and I think we might be doing ourselves a bit of injustice by not putting it out there in our local efforts of what we're doing. I think it's real important we do that. But with that, this meeting adjourned. Merry Christmas, and thank you for being here.